Okay, we're going to see if we can find anybody ready for a quick little drawing lesson this morning on how to draw a Moai. See if we can find anybody tuning in so far. Again, this is going to be picking up some of the different things we've learned while I'm waiting for people to come here. We're going to take some of the things we've already learned and put them into a drawing and kind of see how all those principles come together. So I'm just giving it a second here while people have a chance to get on board. I'm going to see if I can get into Facebook and see if it's starting yet. Yeah, it looks like it's starting. And this isn't 100% live, so it's a little live. It's half alive. So if I don't answer your questions as they come on board, good morning, Milo. Just bear with me. In the end, I'll be able to do that. So welcome to another little drawing class with Thor, the sketching pirate. You got everybody kind of getting on board here? Certainly hope so, because we're about to set the sails and start drawing. We've even got Charlie with us today. He's actually wearing one of his feathers to imitate my beard. He's trying his hardest. That's called a parrot goatee, a la Charlie. Okay. All right. Well, let's see here. Now let's get going with some drawing, huh? Enough on Charlie. That's almost a live picture of Charlie. Okay. So I've got my Cintiq drawing tablet today, and we're going to start by doing a Moai. And I'm going to kind of play on all the different lessons we've learned and see if we can kind of explain how they all come together. Okay, remember we did our first shapes and our first different things with contour line, and I talked a lot about how important contour line is. And for example, the shapes that we did before, like just any kind of any shape at all, that we did the thing where we pretended like we were drawing tape around those shapes, wrapping tape around. Let's give this a little thing here for more interest. And you kind of go lightly around the back. Gets straight there, straight here, but then gets rounded here, goes around the back. Straight here, rounded here, goes around the back. Then this one just kind of goes all the way around. So here's a weird shape. But this is to do with contour line, and we covered that in the first lesson. We also did our squiggle. Remember our squiggle thing where we made a tree by just going back and forth in a zigzag, but then seeing what happens is if you zigzag in an arc this way as opposed to this way, and how if these were branches of a tree, that those zigzagging patterns act just like the analogy of tape. They show contour line that makes something feel like it's three-dimensional because of those lines. And we did a whole tree and everything in that lesson. So we're going to do the same thing with a Moai. Just because it's something... oh, Doug, how did you get your hand and red pen visible? I don't think my hand's visible. I'm using a Cintiq, and so all it's going to show is the pen, pretty much. And you'll be able to see on that, but you won't be seeing my hand this time. But anyway, next time we're going to go back to, we'll do traditional drawing and we'll do charcoal. I've got a big pad I'm going to bring out next time, but this is really easy on this particular thing. Hey, Paul. Welcome, Paul. Aloha. Jeff, too. Oh, Jeff carved a Moai. Oh man, well shoot, I should have had that in the beginning. I could have drawn that Moai. That's a cool looking Moai, Jeff. Damn. I don't know if I could get a chainsaw in here, but I can use a drawing thingamabob. So anyway, let's just, I'm just going to play around here with the Moai idea and see what we come up with, okay? All right. So, typical Moai. Well, Easter Island Moai. You know, when we first learn to draw, we always learn to kind of sketch the outside of something. So I'm just going to kind of sketch the outside and kind of play around with the basic lines of this Moai. And it doesn't, again, have to be perfect. As I say, what these exercises are all about really are the training part, analytical part of drawing. It's when you're not so much concerned about making a beautiful piece of artwork for display, but you're actually just doing it for a study, as in just sort of trying to learn something about what your hand and eye and these techniques of drawing are actually starting to produce. And it's a study. Like I used the analogy and somebody laughed. It's like a surgeon practicing on cadavers. Or, oh, Charlie got nervous up there. Or it's like a nurse practicing giving shots on an orange. It cracks me up, cracking myself up on a Saturday. Oh, you can't hear, but way in the distance, my cuckoo clock just went off, which is a sign that I've got critics everywhere in this house, including the cuckoo clock. All right, so here, let's just say this is a basic kind of a Moai-ish character that's just sort of sketched up loosely like that. All I really was doing here is kind of studying the basic, outlines and the basic forms loosely and just kind of being loose with the whole dealy bob. Now here's where, if we were focusing on contour lines, we could do a study on contour lines. Now here, do you hear that cuckoo? I don't know if you can hear the cuckoo, but I'm getting cuckooed out. So, as animators would do, we often describe something as a center line, but this is in perspective. In other words, if this Moai were directly in front of us like this, let's say, just real quickly, and the face and everything was looking directly at us, the center line is going to be going right directly over the nose and down over the lips and etc. to the chin, down over this whatever this form is, that's coming off of the shoulder area here. But when you look at it in perspective, again, I'm doing this very quickly just to describe the concept. The center line goes right through the middle of the Moai. But when you're looking at it on an angle, the center line is going to be, you're going to be studying it as that idea of wrapping a piece of tape around over the center of the Moai. The Moai its head is turned to one side. I think I think it shows properly on this. Its head is turned to the right. So that piece of tape is going to go over the nose. Think of this again as tape that you're just wrapping and trying to focus on it going down over the center line. It would disappear underneath the chin and reappear probably here, come out like that. That's the center line. You'll see a lot of animators use that when they're studying characters. It really helps them get things aligned. Again, I'm using red because this is an underdrawing. Remember we talked about the underdrawing being where you study the form using contour line and everything and try to figure it all out. And then you can draw over that, especially if you use a light blue or a light red pencil. You can draw over that and then use your ink lines to really define the drawing and establish the integrity of the drawing that you're trying to achieve. So feel free to have this as a technique. Use an underdrawing first. Okay, so we have our center line, and we have our main outline, and we have kind of a structure here. So now we can kind of, if we were to do this with contour line, once again, here's the tape idea again. Actually, a Moai has a area here where it kind of follows out on the cheek. We'll just kind of simplify that a little bit. The tape would come around the lips like this, kind of come out straight for a minute. And it depends on where our eye level is. I didn't get into that again in this lesson as much. But our eye level means if we were standing and looking at this Moai and we were to walk towards it, assuming it was on flat ground, until our eyes hit the Moai, where would it be? Well, you can see, I would say our eye level is somewhere in here. I'll mark that EL. So that if we were standing in front of it, or someone else were to be standing in front of this Moai, they would be, their eye levels, their eyes would be about there. Let's say they're just kind of, there's some kid standing there right next to this Moai. Okay? They're looking at it. His eyes are looking at about this level on the Moai. So things, when you're wrapping your tape, remember we talked about that? You got to think about that as far as what's going to happen. Well, it's going to wrap this way a little bit. Now, this curve is going this way. And these curves on the neck of the tape being wrapped around are going to curve away. Remember we talked about the analogy of a plate at eye level is flat straight across, or an ellipse. We really talked about the ellipses going more open as they get away. They're opening up as you get higher and higher and higher. These are, and there's a whole lesson on proper ellipses, and so I'm being a little sloppy with my ellipses, but you can see one of my previous lessons about drawing the ellipse, and we'll review about all that in coming drawings. Again, the reason I'm doing these is to get you excited about drawing and realize how powerful of a tool it is. I'm keeping it fun, keeping it kind of loose, and if you want to learn more about it, there's a huge amount of information to know when you take classes on perspective and everything that I'm just going over real briskly. You know, on the ear here, we can again show this that happens with wrapping our tape around here. Since we're underneath the ear, we're going to see a little of the underside of that ear as it joins on the side of the Moai. Okay, so you can keep doing this as much as you want. Remember, with the tape, we can wrap this, continue to wrap this Moai in as much tape as we wanted to study the form. If we were just trying to figure out what this would be like if we were to be able to wrap our masking tape all around this puppy and study him. So now we're at eye level, we're below eye level, so this part of the chin is going to kind of scoop back like this, scoop this way. All right, so now you see the application of what I talked about of contour and how it can help you study a form. Now, if you're a sculptor or a carver, this can be really a great exercise to do on a piece of paper before you start pulling the cord on your saw, because it helps you kind of study things. Let's see, what kind of comments coming in now? Hey, Ben is peeking in. I thought you'd be up to your nose in bamboo by now on a Saturday. Okay, so here's another thing. Let's now look at the next level of this this Moai and start to say, remember we talked about what could we, now that we know what these contour lines look like when we've drawn them in red, remember what we did with that sort of that Indian Buddha head that had all the vines on it, or even the tree. We start to go, okay, now let's think less about, and I'm going to put a layer on this. This is the great thing about one of these digital things. You can do things like this. It's like laying a piece of tracing paper on top and just letting it show through a little bit. It's the same thing as I used to do with tracing paper, and we were taught in school, but instead of that, it's called a layer in Photoshop. And now that we've got the layer on there, what we can do is start to figure out what these contour lines in red can be in reality. Well, we could, again, think in terms of cracks. We could show a few clues of cracks in the Moai, like up here on the head. You know, one thing we could do, let me make sure, I'm drawing on the translucent level. I didn't want to do that. We could say there's a crack here on the top of this Moai. And we also as our outside, we start to think of the texture. Most Moai, the ones I've seen in Easter Island, are made of volcanic rock. So they have this real pitted sort of texture to them on the outs when you look at the silhouette of a Moai. So you want to start thinking about that right away. Now remember we talked, if we weren't going to, I'm going to actually cast a shadow on this, but if we weren't doing that, remember we talked about how you could use the technique and the famous artists that do cross hatching and different things like that. If for example this was, let's take for example a simple cylinder like this. If we didn't want to shade it and show actual shadowing, the way we could make the edges go back is by using, it's a technique, I think it's pronounced chiaroscuro modeling. That means towards the sides, the denser your texture is, could be cross-hatching, like this. Cross-hatching is one form of rendering that was done many years ago when they did etchings and things like that. So you can see the further we get out to the edges of the cylinder, the denser and less gray down it gets. And the closer to the middle and the closest part of us to us gets less of that value or light and darkness. And so it tends to make the sides turn back. Well, we could do that with the volcanic texture, and we could go in and make all kinds of interesting shapes, dots and pits and things like that on this Moai's head, like this. And we could, and if I took the time to really do it nicely, we could probably get some pretty good kind of shapes or shading done on this to kind of turn the form. But instead of doing that, what I want to do is show you how to do some shading on this thing with some cast shadows, etc. So I'm not going to do that on this one. Let's keep talking real quick about the contour lines. So where else can we use contour lines? Well, maybe this crack kind of disappears here, but it just barely makes it over the ridge of the brow of the Moai. Maybe it then splits off like a crack would. You know, so you can play around with that kind of stuff too. Well, we definitely want this line in there because that shows where the eye socket changes, or the brow, as the brow meets the area where the eye socket is. And of course we do want these lines, but here we could even look at this one here over the nose. Well, what if we were to do this? Well, what that just did was, this shows a little section where the nose got chipped away, but we're using that line here that we learned about as a underdrawing to show the form. So there's a crack on there we could do. You could do a few other cracks that just kind of go over that surface. We have the outside of the lip area of the Moai. Can't really see the lower lip because it's above our eye level. And then again, this chin may just come on down like this. Let's do another crack up here. We're doing a crack that's based on a line and lines we see in our contour lines. And the contour lines are helping us. They're our understatement, our underdrawing of form. Okay, and just to hurry this up, let's just finish out the Moai a little bit here, kind of show the underside of the ear and line here. I hope you guys this weekend, some of you get some paper and and here's the ground. I'm not gonna show a perfect bottom. I'm gonna indicate that it's laying in some grass or tufts of other rocks and grass. So I'm going to define the cheekbone a little bit to show you what that is. So here we got a Moai so far. Now let's go into our shading. Cast shadows, all that kind of stuff. Well, what I'm going to do, instead of use charcoal like I did last time, is I'm going to take advantage of the Cintiq, and I'm going to pretend like this is old, like pen and ink. And I'm going to use a grayed down color, as though I'm taking water with some ink and mixing it up into a wash, a really light kind of a wash. And then I'm going to use that. Let me see. Okay, underneath there. So I'm going to keep it loose. Let's see if this feels about right. Yeah, that's not bad. Okay, so shadowing. Well, we got to figure out where our light source is, right? Actually, what I'm going to do is do two things. We're going to do shadowing, but I'm going to do a little bit of highlighting as though with a white pencil on this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change our white paper into slightly gray paper like this. And I'm going to put it on multiply so you can still see our red drawing underneath. And that means that I can lighten it up. Let's see here. Okay. This is the interesting part of these Cintiq things is, oh, here it is. Okay. Is you can just do so darn much with them. It's really fun. Okay, so we got this kind of grayish paper. Now I'm going to go ahead and start adding some value to it. Darker values. Okay, ready? Here we go. Let's see if this is too light, too dark, or just about right. A little bit dark. I can change the opacity on that. Okay, so our light source is coming from, let's say, here. Let's say here. Our light source is coming from here. Oh, let's say, kind of. Yeah, higher, steeper. Let's say about like this. Something like that, okay? A little bit steeper light source. All right, so that means that if we're to do this as a truly shadowed Moai, let's start with the brow here. That's going to be in shadow, right? And not only is it going to be in shadow down to here, but it's probably going to go over the bridge of the nose a little bit. And look at the red line underneath. That helps us know what kind of curve to put on that. And then we're going to not see it for a second as it goes around the other side, just like our piece of tape, and it's going to, draw over to the other side. Underside of the nose, I'm kind of hitting the areas that are easiest. And since this light source is coming on this angle that it is, we're going to get a cast shadow. Remember I told you a little bit about cast shadows. And some of these things you can observe when you look at things in nature, and then other things you're going to have to make up just by what you've learned. The lip, obviously, is going to be in shadow. And then probably what's going to happen is you're going to catch a little piece of that upper lip there, is going to be just ever so slightly evident. Sorry, little sliver there. And then you're going to get a shadow off the bottom part of this lower lip. And it'll probably just disappear off to the side here, and we'll have this something. It's going to be something like that. And since it's coming from one side hitting the other, you're going to have probably this shadow continuing more on the guy's right side. Okay, well let's hit this side of the ear and the bottom. It probably will have a little bit of a cast shadow also off of that, just a little bit of one. And then of course we're going to have a shadow that kind of makes a rounded shape on the bottom of that neck, similar to what we talked about with how a cylinder takes on shadow. And some of this stuff you can learn, again, by practicing with the basic shapes I showed you, and trying to see how they. I'm showing a little bit of light on the upper forehead, on the side furthest away from the light, because the light will probably just make it about as far as the middle or past to the forehead, and then start to dissipate. Now this is where you can also show a little texture if you wanted to, if this were lava rock. Again, learn by looking at your reference. When you do a bunch of these, after a while you won't even have to look at anything. Like I can draw a human skull pretty darn much out of my head, just because I've drawn so many damn skulls. For some reason they've just been in demand. Okay, so we have this light and dark shadow kind of a thing. Probably have a little bit on the nose, but that nose is swooping forward, and so since it's swooping forward, it's catching more of the light. And then what I would do too is see this area here where the cheekbone shifts from facing up more to down. If I had another value, I would probably put that one into shadow a little bit too, if I wanted to add even more of a plane that changes. Okay. Let me check something here. My background color is, where is that? Here. Okay. Let's see if I can darken that up a little bit, just because I want to try something here. All right. So our light. Now remember our light, we talked about highlighting. Now I'm not getting into really well-rounded, soft rendering here. I'm just trying to kind of give you the principles. Remember we talked about our core shadows and everything. Well, this one would have core shadows. They're going to be pretty subtle the way I've got the light going. But I'm going to darken up an area here. We would probably have a little bit of that core shadow happening on the why isn't that showing up? In areas like this, see where that shadow is on the forehead, where it is there. A little bit on the nose, there'd be a little core shadow here. Probably a little bit here before it turns around here. You might even catch a little core shadow on that edge of a sharp core shadow on the edge where the ear changes. You get that sort of stuff happening. Now, again, I'm doing this real simply so as not to get into too much detail on this booger. But if I were to take this one step further, I'd probably change my cast shadows into darker shadows. Like, for example, here, I'd experiment with that and say, well, what happened if I made these shadows a little bit darker? And then as they got up in here, you can use your texture as a stipple. You know, they might fade till they finally get up to where the brow is, but because it's a cast shadow, it helps, you know, give something a little bit more interesting. There we go. It's hard to do this really quickly, and when you're trying to teach it and talk about it and do it at the same time, it's really quite a challenge, I'm finding. But hopefully you guys are getting something out of it, or at least getting inspired to kind of look it up a little bit further. Now we can go in here and take our light, for example, and okay, well, what's going to happen with our light? Well, it's going to do this. Well, up on the top here, where it's hitting, obviously, that little ridge, we're going to get some light happening in here. And I'm gonna say that since it's kind of hitting this one side, this is where you'd get some of your texture. And if this were a stone piece, this sort of highlighted area is not going to be hard. It's going to be soft. Remember we did the cylinder and how we showed how, you know, the little highlight on a cylinder makes it pop, especially when you've got when we're doing traditional modeling. Well, same thing here, bridge of the nose. It's going to come down here. It's probably going to catch that little ridge here. We'll get some sort of interesting lighting on that. We're definitely going to hit areas of the crack that are going to pick up some of the light. Maybe even this little side edge is going to pick up a little bit of light. Top of the ear, and then of course anything that's pitted, since the lower edge of a pit or a hole is going to catch some light, you'd get this sort of stuff going on. The cracks are going to pick up light, maybe a little bit on the ridge of here. Since the mouth is actually like a cylinder that's distorted, you're going to get a little bit of that highlighting happening here. Then as we come down on the jaw, again, if you broke this whole thing down, really the Moai is a modified, hacked into series of cylinders and some rectangular shapes. But really, especially top of the head here, it's very cylindrical-like. And you can cheat a little on some of these and give it a little bit of highlighting. Again, see how I'm putting the highlight on the edge furthest away of a little pit in here? That's because that's technically what would happen. It would catch that edge a little bit. Now we have the base, which is almost like a half sphere. So I'm hitting the highlight side of the half sphere because our light, remember, is coming down in this way, striking that a little bit. Okay. So basically, I mean, in a very, very rough way, this is kind of how, that would work on this kind of character. Now, some artists you'll see do different things that are just totally style preferences. Like they'll show a interesting sort of highlight on the side in order to make this thing pop out away from the Moai, that would represent a very exaggerated secondary light or a reflected light on the form. But really, they traditionally teach you, don't ever make a reflected light as bright as your source light. Your source light being here. You should always have your reflected light a little bit lighter, but you can play around with it, stylize things a little bit. You'll find that you learn a series of rules, and then you learn when to break the rules just because it looks cool. And that's the great part about drawing. Again, you're in control, and you use your intuition. You say, hey, that looks good, or hey, that's not working. And you keep adjusting until these things start to work. Like I said, even if you're not an artist, you know what looks right and what doesn't look right. You'll get a sense. So I'm bringing some reflected light into this form so that it exaggerates the core shadow and stuff of the forms a little bit better. You know, you can even do that down here on the bottom of the ear. We can say that light is bouncing off the cheek and bouncing back into this shadow area on the bottom of the ear, maybe. You know, all that kind of stuff can happen. And then, you know, again, you start to go, okay, well, let me take away where is that? Let's take away all of our underdrawing and start to look at it. And you end up, you got something that that you've got a study of this Moai. And if we were taking our time, of course, I'd do a little more homework on this. I'd look at things and try to do a stronger representation based on what I've observed and what I know and the combinations thereof, and you end up with some pretty interesting things starting to happen. But just for a quick little demonstration, this is what we have. Okay, so I'll get into more things this weekend. I just wanted to kind of, again, remember our basic shapes. Really practice those. The sphere, the cone. Actually, let's do a light sphere. The sphere, remember, we have a core shadow, and we have, this is why you can also do this really loosely. If you have a somewhat spherical shaped thing, we talked about our core shadow. There's the highlight of our not so perfectly shaped sphere, but it expresses the basic principle of a core shadow and a reflected light in here, the main light here, and the highlight there. And we did all the different shapes. So go practice your shapes and look at that last lesson. It'll help you a lot. Okay? So have a great Saturday and go to the art store and get your drawing pad. And go nuts. And I'll see you again real soon. All right? Thanks so much, you guys. I hope you enjoyed.